Rain was pounding on the darkened windows of the onyx, starkened windows, each drop creating a small percussion on the glass and preventing the outside world from looking in. I could even hear the low-bass sounds coming from the hidden speakers, the sounds of crystal glasses, and the murmurs of voices that didn't rise above the carefully controlled whispers. Everything about the onyx was deliberate, expensive, and dangerous. Just like the man sitting at the corner table every night, watching the world go by. My feet were killing me in the ridiculous high heels Marco made all the female bartenders wear. Made of black patent leather, these 12 centimeters heels started burning my calves after the first hour, and by the third hour, I felt a deep ache in my spine. I was into my 6th hour, and every step I took behind the bar felt like walking on broken glass. My lower back throbbed with a deep, relentless pain from standing too long, carrying heavy trays, and pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. But the pain in my feet was nothing. It was nothing compared to the other pain. The pain desperately tried to hide with 3 layers of foundation and powder that cost more than I could afford. Don't touch, Lauren. Don't draw attention. I adjusted my face, tilted my head so the dim amber light fell on my good side. Onyx specialized in shadows, hidden corners, and secret deals. The low-hanging Edison bulbs gave off just enough light to see your drink, but not enough to read the secrets on someone's face. Usually, that worked in my favor. Tonight, I wasn't so sure. Macallan 25, neat, I murmured to myself, reaching for the top shelf without looking. My hands were now on autopilot, muscle memory taking over when my tired mind failed. Pour. Swirl. Serve. Smile. The businessman in the Armani suit nodded approvingly and swiped his black American Express card across the bar. His eyes lingered on my face for too long, and I know what the problem was before he even asked. Long shift, I said quickly, swiping his card efficiently out of habit. You know how it is. He didn't. Men like him never did. But he accepted the lie because it was easier, and I was grateful for that small mercy. Onyx attracted a wealthy and dangerous clientele. Rich. Connected. Dangerous. Men in $1,000 suits whispered over drinks more expensive than my monthly rent. Women adorned with diamonds laughed too loudly at unfunny jokes, their eyes always calculating, always on the lookout for an opportunity. And then there was him. Dante Moretti. I learned his name on my first night. Marco had whispered it with the reverence usually reserved for saints or monsters. The booth in the right corner. See that man? That's Dante Moretti. You will serve him personally, give him whatever he wants, and never, ever ask questions. Understand? I understood. For 3 weeks, I had watched him with curiosity. I watched other customers stay away from his section, conversations stop when he stood up, even Marco, who feared nothing, approached his table with a slight bow of respect. Dante Moretti owned more than half of this city, at least according to the rumors. He controlled the legal half through real estate empires and investment portfolios. The other half, the one operating in the shadows and back alleys, was governed by something far more primitive than money. Fear. Loyalty. Absolute power. He never raised his voice. There was no need to. Men twice his size would move at the slightest gesture of his elegant hand. Deals were sealed with a nod of his head. Fates were decided by the curve of his lips, whether they turned into a smile or a frown. And he had been watching me for 3 weeks. Not openly. Dante Moretti never did anything openly. But as he mixed cocktails, polished glasses, leaned over the bar to drown out the music and listen to a customer's order, I felt his eyes on me. His gaze was like a physical weight, warm and appraising, sending an unwanted tingle of awareness through my skin. Tonight, those eyes felt heavier than ever. I risked a glance at his table. As always, he sat alone, perched on a curved leather chair that gave him a perfect view of the entire club. His suit was midnight black, tailored to fit his body like a second skin, stitched with meticulous precision. The collar of his white shirt beneath was open. He wore no tie, revealing a triangular patch of his tan skin and the glint of a gold chain. His dark hair was combed back from a face with sharp features and aristocratic lines, reminiscent of a Roman coin. Beautiful. Frightening. Untouchable. Our eyes met in the crowded room, and my breath caught. He didn't look away. He didn't smile. He just held my gaze with those impossibly dark eyes that seemed to pierce right through the facade, the smile, every wall I had carefully built between myself and the world. My hand trembled slightly as I placed the bottle I was holding on the table. Don't tremble. Don't show weakness. Not here. Not in front of him. Lauren. Marco's voice interrupted my thoughts. Mr. Moretti would like a drink. Of course he would. Grateful that my trembling hands could do something, I nodded. What will he have? Lagavulin 16. Double. No ice. Marco's eyes held a warning. And he wants you to bring it. I panicked. I had never served Dante Moretti in 3 weeks. Other bartenders handled his section, elderly women with steady hands and no visible damage. I was kept behind the bar, mixing drinks for the general customer base, staying a safe distance from him. Until now. Why me? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Marco's expression hardened. Because he wants you. When Dante Moretti wants something, you don't question it. You do it and deliver. My hand steadied as I prepared his drink. At least I knew how to do that. Lagavulin 16 was a serious whiskey, smoky and complex, not to be rushed. I chose the right glass, a heavy amber crystal one that caught the light. 2 fingers, perfectly measured. No ice, so as not to dilute its peaty richness. I lifted the glass, examining the golden liquid for flaws. There were none. Whatever else I might be, I was good at my job. Perfect, even. It was the only thing I could still control, the only area where I could still be perfect. The path from the bar to his table felt miles long. Everyone in the club was watching my movements. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Even the music seemed to have lowered its volume, but I knew that was impossible. Onyx's sound system was automatic, programmed to maintain the exact same decibel level all night long. It just felt quieter. It was as if the whole world had held its breath. Dante watched me approach with the same intensity he showed toward everything. His posture was relaxed, one arm stretched behind the booth, his legs crossed at the ankles, deceptively comfortable. But the way his eyes followed my every step, recording everything, evaluating it, missing nothing, was anything but comfortable. Especially the bruise I was trying to hide. I felt the moment his gaze locked onto my cheek. I felt the room's temperature drop 10 degrees, his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, a muscle twitching beneath his smooth olive skin. Your Lagavulin, Mr. Moretti, I said, my voice admirably steady, placing the glass on his table with a soft click. 2 fingers, neat. Sit. 1 word. Not a request. It was an order given in a voice like smoke and whiskey, dark and smooth, with a sharp edge. I hesitated. I should get back to the bar. Marco's. Sit down. This time harsher, but not louder. He extended his hand toward the empty space beside the booth. Marco will handle it. He would. Marco would set the bar on fire rather than interrupt what Dante Moretti wanted. I sat down in the booth, careful to maintain the distance between us. Up close, he was even more impressive. His scent overwhelmed my senses, cedar and smoke, expensive cologne and a darker, more primal undertone. His presence was so overwhelming that it filled the small space. I couldn't breathe outside of it. He didn't say anything for a long time. He just raised his glass, examined the whiskey like an expert, and took a slow sip. His eyes never left my face. You know your whiskey, he said finally, approval in his voice. Most bartenders here would fill it up to 3 fingers. They'd try to impress me with the quantity. Lagavulin doesn't need quantity to impress, I replied, without thinking. The taste speaks for itself. The corner of his mouth turned up. It was almost a smile. You talk like someone who understands quality. I know my job. Yes. His gaze intensified. I've been watching you work. You're good. Better than good. The way you handle difficult customers, the care you show when pouring drinks, remembering orders without writing them down. He took another sip. You have a talent. The unexpected compliment made my face flush. Thank you, Mr. Moretti. Dante. What? My name is Dante. Call me that. Addressing someone by their first name felt dangerous. Like crossing a point of no return. But refusing him felt even more dangerous. Thank you, Dante. He nodded with satisfaction. Then he moved his empty hand, closing the small distance between us. I froze when his fingers gently cupped my chin and turned my face toward the light. His touch was warm, gentle. It completely contradicted his deadly reputation. "Look at me," he said quietly. I looked. I couldn't help myself. Up close, his eyes were darker, almost black in the dim light, framed by thick lashes that should have made him look feminine, but somehow made him look more masculine. There was something ancient in those eyes, something that had seen a lot but still refused to look away. Her thumb stroked my cheekbone. Right over the bruise. Right over the purple. I flinched. The expression on her face didn't change, but the air around us suddenly became tense, electrified with a violence that hadn't been there before. When she spoke, her voice was like silk wrapped around steel. "Look at me. Who did this to you?" The words, I think they were Italian, came out in a soft, deadly tone. But even though I didn't understand the language, I heard the question beneath. "Who did this to you?" My heart was beating so fast in my chest that I was sure he could hear it. His thumb was still touching my cheek, warm and steady, his eyes demanding an answer I couldn't give. "I don't know what you are asking," I whispered, but we both knew it was a lie. "Yes, you do." His voice dropped further, sincere despite the traces of danger in every syllable. "Someone hurt you. Someone touched you." His jaw tightened, that muscle twitching again. "I want a name, Lauren." The sound of my name coming from his lips sent a shiver down my spine. I hadn't told him my name. But of course he knew. Dante Moratti had made it his mission to know everything about everyone around him. And somehow, without my permission or knowledge, I had entered his circle. "It doesn't matter," I said, trying to pull away. His hand didn't tighten, didn't force me, but somehow I couldn't move. "It was just an accident. I'm clumsy," I bumped into. "Don't." The single word cut like a knife. Don't insult my intelligence with lies. I've seen enough bruises to know the difference between an accident and a punch. My throat tightened. Of course he was right. The bruise on my cheek was shaped like a fist mark, the kind left by someone who knew how to hit, who had done it before and would do it again. Marcus. My ex-boyfriend. Although ex was too generous a term for someone who still came to my apartment wanting to come in, still called 20 times a day, still thought he owed me. "I can't," I said finally, my voice trembling. "I can't tell you." Dante's eyes narrowed. "Can't you, or won't you?" "Both." I forced myself to meet his gaze, to show him I wasn't completely broken. "I don't mean to be disrespectful, Mr. Moretti." Dante. Dante. The name felt foreign on my tongue, too intimate. "This isn't your problem. I can handle it." "Can you handle it?" His thumb caressed my cheekbone again, so gently it made my chest ache. "Is that why you work 6 nights a week in those high heels that ruin your feet? Why do you flinch every time the door opens? Why do your hands tremble when you think no one is watching?" God, he really had been watching. He had seen everything I thought I was hiding. "I need this job," I said quietly. "I need the money. Please, let me go back to work and forget what you saw." He didn't say anything for a long time. He studied my face with an intense gaze that made me feel naked, exposed, as if he could see all my hidden secrets. Then he released my chin and leaned back, raising his whiskey. "You're right," he said, his voice perfectly controlled. "This isn't my problem. You can go back to work." A feeling of relief and something resembling doubtful disappointment battled in my chest. With trembling hands, I smoothed my black skirt and stepped out of the booth. "Thank you for your understanding. But Lauren..." His voice stopped me in my tracks. When I turned back, I saw him watching me from the edge of his glass, his eyes shining with something dark and possessive. "Understand this. I protect what's mine. And whether you realize it or not, the moment you stepped into my club, you became mine." Those words should have scared me. They should have made me run for the exit without looking back. Instead, they created a different tremor in my body, a warm, dangerous, and completely unwanted tremor. "I'm not yours," I said, but there was no convincing tone in my voice. His smile was slow, predatory. "Not yet. But you will be." Before he said anything else, before I did something stupid like believe him, I fled back to the bar. Marco raised his eyebrows when I stepped behind the mahogany counter. Everything okay? Fine, I lied, grabbing a bottle of vodka and mixing a dirty martini. My hands were shaking even more now. He just wanted to compliment the drink service. Marco's gaze told me he didn't believe me, but he was smart enough not to press further. No one questioned what happened at Dante Moretti's table. What was said there stayed there, protected by an unspoken rule that everyone at the Onyx understood. The rest of my shift passed in a blur. I mixed drinks, smiled, acted as if everything was normal, but I felt Dante's eyes constantly on me, heavy and appraising, following my every move. At 2 a.m., the club began to empty. The serious drinkers and the men working in the dark corners remained, but the ordinary crowd dispersed into the rainy Boston night. At 2:30 a.m., Marco told me I could leave early. Quiet night, he said, but we both knew it wasn't. Go home, Lauren. Get some rest. I didn't argue. My feet hurt, my back hurt, and the bruise on my cheek was throbbing violently again. I grabbed my jacket from the back room, a worn-out jacket that offered little protection against the November cold, and headed for the staff exit. The rain had intensified, a heavy downpour that instantly soaked my thin coat. I'd missed the last bus, which meant walking 20 blocks home in shoes designed for looks, not for walking. The story of my life. After walking 3 blocks, I heard footsteps behind me. My whole body froze. I recognized those footsteps. Heavy. Determined. Purposeful. Lauren. Marcus's voice drowned out the rain. Baby, wait. Fear locked my muscles. Don't turn around. Don't talk. Keep walking. I said wait. His hand grabbed my arm and spun me around so hard I stumbled in my ridiculous high heels. He looked terrible. Unshaven, eyes wild, clothes rumpled as if he'd slept in them. The smell of cheap whiskey wafted off him in waves. Let me go, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. You are violating the restraining order. Restraining order, he laughed bitterly and sharply. That piece of paper means nothing, and you know it. You think you can just walk away from me? After everything I've done for you? After all I've done for you, you say. I tried to pull my arm away, but he held it so tightly it hurt. Marcus, please. Let me go home. Home? His face twisted with anger. To that shitty apartment you barely scrape by in? To work at that club, serving drinks to rich jerks who look at you like you're a dish on the menu? He pulled me toward him, raising his other hand. You're mine, Lauren. You always will be. I don't think so. The voice came from behind Marcus, as smooth and cold as winter ice. When we both turned to look, we saw Dante Moretti standing 3 meters away, sandwiched between 2 giant men. The rain had plastered his dark hair to his head and his white shirt to his muscular chest. In the light of the street lamp, he looked like a beautiful and deadly black angel. And he was furious. This wasn't the hot, explosive rage Marcus carried. This was something else entirely. A cold rage that lowered the temperature, cold enough to slow the rain itself. Stay away from him, Dante said quietly. Now. Marcus's grip loosened slightly, uncertainty appearing on his face. This doesn't concern you, my friend. This is between me and my girlfriend. Ex-girlfriend, I corrected, finding my voice. And it does concern her. The person you attacked is her employee. Dante approached, each step deliberate and measured. The 2 men beside him moved with him, silent shadows radiating menace. Let me be very clear, Dante said, still in that frighteningly calm voice. You will keep your hands off Lauren. You will leave here. And you will never approach her again. He tilted his head slightly. Is that understood? Marcus tried to laugh, tried to act tough, but his hand fell from my arm. Or what? Will you call the police? I'm not afraid. The movement was so fast I could barely see it. One moment Dante was standing 5 meters away. The next, his hand was wrapped around Marcus's throat, slamming him into the brick wall of the nearest building. I won't call the police, Dante said, his voice dropping to a whisper that was somehow more frightening than shouting. I handle my own problems. And right now, you're a problem. Marcus's eyes bulged, his hands clawing at Dante's wrist. But Dante didn't budge, seemingly effortless as he pinned the man, who was 15 centimeters taller than him, against the wall with one hand. Please, Marcus gasped. I'll leave. I'll leave her alone. Yes, you will. Dante approached, and even from where I stood, I could see the absolute determination in his eyes. Because if I ever see him near you again, if I hear that you've called him, texted him, walked past his apartment, breathed in his direction. He paused, leaving his threat hanging in the rain-soaked air. They'll never find his body. Do you understand? Marcus shook his head frantically, his face purple. Dante let him go and stepped back with the same fluid grace he had shown as he walked forward. Marcus collapsed onto the wet pavement, gasping and coughing. Go, Dante said. Now. Marcus got up and ran, disappearing into the rain-soaked darkness without looking back. Silence fell, broken only by the steady sound of the rain and my ragged breathing. Dante turned to me, and the cold anger in his eyes transformed into something else. Something that made my knees tremble for entirely different reasons. Are you hurt? He asked, closing the distance between us in 2 steps. His hands framed my face, tilting it toward the street lamp. Did he hurt you? No, I replied. Before you got here. My voice trailed off. How did you know? I had someone follow you. To make sure you got home safely. He said it as if it were the most natural thing in the world, as if having me followed was entirely reasonable. When they reported that man approaching you, I came myself. This should have disturbed me. The invasion of my privacy, the assumption that I needed protection, the audacity of the decision to have me followed without asking. Instead, I felt something break inside my chest. Something that had kept me going for months, maybe years. He was going to hit me again, I whispered, unable to stop the words before they left my mouth. He always does. He always says it'll be the last time, but it never is, and I don't have the money to move. I don't have the money to hire a lawyer to enforce a restraining order. I don't have the money for anything except this job and my shitty apartment and... Dante pulled me to his chest, one hand stroking the back of my head, the other wrapping around my waist. His embrace was tight, protective, completely unexpected. Breathe, he whispered into my hair. Just breathe, Lauren. I did. And for the first time in months, I felt safe. We stood like that for a long time, the rain soaking our clothes, my face pressed against his chest, his heart beating steadily and strongly beneath my cheek. Come with me, he said finally, pulling back slightly to look at me. I'll take you somewhere safe. I can't, I protested weakly. I have to go home, I have to. Your apartment isn't safe. He knows where you live. Dante's thumb wiped a raindrop from my cheek, or maybe it was a tear. Please, Lauren. Trust me. I should have said no. I should have walked away from this dangerous man with his violent solutions and possessive declarations. Instead, I found myself whispering, okay. The car pulling up to the curb wasn't just expensive. It was outrageously expensive. Its windows were so dark I couldn't see inside, yet it gleamed with chrome in the light of the rain-soaked street lamps. The engine purred like a contented cat, its power carefully contained. One of Dante's men, the tall one with a scar splitting his left eyebrow, opened the back door. Dante's hand pressed against my lower backhand, with a touch that was somehow both gentle and extremely authoritative, guided me inside. The interior was filled with leather and the scent of cedar Dante used. The heated seats immediately warmed my rain-soaked body, and when I sank into the plush leather seat, probably more expensive than anything I owned, I couldn't suppress a small sigh of relief. Dante slid next to me, his thighs close enough to touch mine. The door closed with a solid thud, a testament to German engineering and bulletproof glass. Where are we going? I asked, suddenly aware of how alone we were. How could I have trusted a man I barely knew, a man known for his violence and control? Somewhere safe, Dante replied, pulling out his phone. He quickly typed something, then put the phone aside and turned his dark eyes on me. Somewhere he'll never find you. The car entered the traffic smoothly, easily navigating the rain-soaked streets. I watched the familiar places in my neighborhood pass by the window, the shop where I sold the groceries I bought at the market, the laundromat I went to every Sunday, the bus stop where I waited in the cold every morning. My whole life was concentrated in a few old blocks. Your hands are shaking, Dante said quietly. I looked down and realized he was right. My hands were shaking in my lap, the adrenaline finally leaving my body after the immediate danger had passed. Without a word, Dante reached out and took my hands. His palms were warm, with calluses in unexpected places. These weren't the soft hands of a man who only signed papers and made phone calls. These were hands that had worked, fought, probably done things I wouldn't want to know about. But the hands that held mine were soft, and they stopped my trembling. "You're safe now," he said, his voice dropping to that low tone that made my bones tremble. "I promise you, Lauren. He will never touch you again." "You can't promise that," I whispered. "You don't know Marcus. He's obsessed. He won't give up just because some guy threatened him in an alley." Dante's smile was cold, predatory. "I'm not a man." And that wasn't a threat. It was a promise. His thumb traced circles on the back of my hand, the gesture contradicting the deadly intent in his voice. "By morning, Marcus will understand exactly what happens to men who hurt what's mine." "I'm not yours," I said automatically, but my protest sounded weak even to my own ears. "You keep saying that." His eyes met mine, dark and infinite. "But your body thinks differently. The moment I touched you, your hands stopped trembling. When I held you, your breathing steadied. Your fear vanished when I promised to protect you." As he drew near, I caught the scent of rain, cedar, and something uniquely his. "Tell me, Lauren, when was the last time you felt safe?" The question hit me like a physical blow. When was the last time? Before Marcus, of course. Before I made the mistake of thinking his interest was love, not possession. Before I learned that jealousy wasn't romantic, that isolation wasn't protection, that the first slap would never be the last. "I don't remember," I confessed, my voice trembling. Dante's expression changed. His predatory edge softened into something almost tender. "Then let me give you this," he said quietly. "I'll give you security. I'll protect you as you should have been protected from the beginning." The car turned onto a tree-lined street I didn't recognize. Brownstone buildings gave way to modern high-rises, rain-soaked sidewalks to immaculate pavements. We were now in Boston's financial district, where the city's elite lived in sky-piercing towers. The Mercedes passed through the automatic security gates and entered the underground garage. Everything was spotless, perfectly maintained, the kind of building where the monthly fees probably exceeded my annual income. "Where are we?" I asked as the car stopped in a private parking spot. "Home," Dante said, as if that explained everything. Before I could grasp the meaning, the door opened. The scarred man was waiting, his umbrella open even though we were underground. Dante got out of the car, then turned and offered me his hand. I hesitated. This was it. The moment when I could still say no, when I could still ask to be taken anywhere else, to a hotel, to my apartment, anywhere other than what Dante Moretti called home. The moment when I could still claim control of my own life. But we both knew that was a lie. I had lost control the moment Marcus's fist first hit my face. Or perhaps even before that, the moment I couldn't make a real choice because I was so poor, so helpless, and so alone. At least with Dante, the cage was gold-plated. I put my hand in his and let him pull me out of the car. The private elevator required a key card and a fingerprint scan. Dante provided both without question, silently pulling me up the building without ever taking his hand off my waist. My reflection stared back at me from the shiny chrome walls. I looked like a drowned rat, mascara running under my eyes, hair plastered to my head, cheap work clothes clinging to my body. Next to Dante's controlled elegance, I looked exactly like I was. A poor girl in over her head. The elevator opened directly onto a penthouse apartment, and my breath caught. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over Boston Harbor, the rain-streaked glass transforming the city lights into abstract art. The space was huge, an open-plan living room furnished with pieces reflecting Italian design and great wealth. Everything was in shades of charcoal and cream, masculine but not cold, powerful but not ostentatious. "Is this where you live?" I asked, stepping onto the mirror-like marble floors. "One of the places I live," Dante corrected, moving toward a hidden panel that revealed a fully stocked bar. "I have a house in the suburbs for family gatherings. I have an apartment in New York for work. I stay here when I want privacy." He poured 2 fingers of amber-colored liquid into crystal glasses, then came over to where I stood frozen by the window. "Drink," he said, placing the glass in my hand. "It'll help you get over the shock." I took a sip without thinking, then coughed as the expensive whiskey burned my throat. "What is this?" "Lagavulin 16. A smile appeared on his lips. "I thought you'd like it." The same whiskey I had offered him before. A few minutes before everything exploded, I returned to the moments when I thought I could keep my two worlds separate. Before Dante Moretti decided I belonged to him. I took another sip, letting the smoky warmth spread through my chest. "Why are you doing this? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything." Dante placed his glass on the table next to him, then turned to face me. In the dim light of the apartment, he looked like a statue carved from marble. His sharp features and classical beauty were combined with a hardness that made him human. "You're wrong," he said quietly. "I know you. I know you work 6 nights a week and still can't pay your rent on time. I know you take the late bus home because the early one is too expensive. I know you usually eat 1 meal a day, usually at the club, because you can't afford more." His hand rose to caress my face, his thumb stroking my bruised cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "I know someone hurt you, and you didn't ask for help because of your pride or your fear." My breath caught. "You were watching me." Yes. There was no apology. There was no excuse. Just a simple acknowledgement. "This should scare me," I whispered. "Should it?" His thumb slid to my lower lip, tracing its curve with painful slowness. "Or should it finally comfort you to know that someone saw you? To know that someone finally valued you enough to pay attention?" Tears streamed from my eyes. When was the last time someone had truly seen me? Someone who cared whether I ate, whether I got home safely, whether my smile was real or fake? "I don't understand what you want from me," I said, my voice trembling. "Men like you don't do this for free." "So what? What do you want in return?" Dante's smile was slow, devastating. "Everything, Lauren. I want everything." "I can't give you everything," I protested weakly. "I have nothing. No money, no connections, nothing." "I don't want your money." He set my glass aside, then took my hands again. "I don't want your connections, your favors, or anything you think you need to offer a man like me." His eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made it impossible to look away. "I want you. I want your time, your trust, your presence. I want to know you're safe when you fall asleep at night. I want you to wake up in the morning without fear. I don't want you to look in the mirror and see someone who deserves to be beaten." My tears began to flow. I couldn't stop them. "Why?" My question was almost a whisper. "Why me?" He didn't say anything for a long time. He studied my face as if memorizing every detail, every tear stain, every flaw. "Because I've spent my whole life surrounded by people who want something from me," he finally said. "Power, money, protection, kindness. Everyone has a purpose, everyone has a price." He wiped my tear with his thumb. "But you? That first night, you didn't even know who I was. You served me drinks like I was just another customer. You didn't butter me up, you didn't flirt, you didn't try to distract me with anything else." I was scared, I admitted. "Marco said you were dangerous." "I am dangerous," he said it without pride or shame, just as a simple fact. "But not to you. Never to you." He leaned in until his forehead touched mine, a surprisingly sincere gesture. "Let me keep you safe, Lauren. Give me a place where you won't have to be afraid anymore." I should have said no. I should have protected what little independence I had left. I should have understood what this was, a powerful man offering shelter in exchange for ownership. But God help me, I was so tired of being afraid. Tired of fearing shadows, of rationing food, of applying protective cream. Tired of pretending to be strong while just trying to survive. "Okay," I whispered. "But I need rules. Boundaries. I need to know what this is." Dante stepped back to look at me, a question in his dark eyes. "I'll keep working," I said, finding strength in bargaining. "I'll cover my own expenses as best I can. And this." I gestured at the distance between us. "Whatever this is, it will be because it's my choice. Not because I owe you. Not because I'm trapped. Because I want to be here." This time his smile was genuine, reaching his eyes. "Agreed. But whether you think you need it or not, I reserve the right to look after you. It's not up for debate," he cut me off, but his voice was soft. "You'll learn, Lauren. I protect what's mine. This isn't up for debate. It's just what I do." That expression again. What's mine? As if I already belonged to him, as if it had been decided before I even entered his club. Maybe it was. "Come," he said, taking my hand. "Let me show you where you'll sleep." He led me through a corridor decorated with abstract art, past what looked like a home office and a fully equipped gym, into a bedroom that made my entire apartment look like a closet. The bed was enormous, covered in kohl-colored sheets with a thread count probably higher than my credit score. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the harbor, rain still dripping down the glass, reflecting the city lights. The adjacent bathroom gleamed with marble and chrome, featuring a shower large enough for 4 people and a bathtub that looked like it belonged in a spa. "This is the guest room," Dante said, watching my reaction. "You'll be comfortable here." I turned to him and suddenly realized how close we were standing. Being alone with him in the bedroom, while it rained outside and the rest of the city slept, felt strangely intimate. "Where do you sleep?" I asked, then immediately wanted to take the question back. His smile was meaningful. "At the end of the hallway. Close enough that you can hear me if you need me. Far enough that you can breathe." He reached out and tucked my wet hair behind my ear. "For now." The meaning hung in the air between us. For now, I would have my own space. For now, he would keep his distance. For now, I was a guest. But eventually, that would change. Eventually, I would be his, not just in name, but in reality. "There are clothes for you in the closet," he continued, stepping back. "Toiletries in the bathroom. Everything you need for tonight. Tomorrow, we'll arrange for your things to be moved here." I didn't agree to move, I protested, waves of panic rising in my chest. "You didn't agree to go back to that apartment he knows the address of," Dante replied softly. "An apartment with broken locks and a landlord who can't be bothered to fix them. An apartment where you'll spend every night wondering if tonight is the night he'll decide his restraining order doesn't matter." He was right. God, he was right, and I hated that he was right. "Okay," I said quietly. "Okay." Dante walked toward the door, then paused in the doorway. "Lauren?" "Yes?" His eyes met mine across the room, dark and infinite, filled with something like a promise. "You're safe now. I want you to believe that." Then he left, the door closing softly behind him, leaving me alone in a bedroom more expensive than I'd earned in 5 years. I walked to the windows, pressed my palm against the cold glass, and watched the sleeping city. Somewhere out there was my apartment, my life, everything I had built on my own with my stubborn will. And somewhere out there was Marcus, hopefully running away in fear, hopefully realizing he had made a powerful enemy. But here, 40 stories above the streets where I had learned to survive, I felt something unfamiliar. I was safe. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt safe. I didn't know if it was a blessing or a trap. Perhaps both. I woke up to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, the kind of bright morning light that comes after a heavy rain has washed the city clean. For a moment, I didn't know where I was. The bed was too soft, the sheets too expensive, the ceiling too high. Then my memories came back. Marcus. The street. Dante's hands around my ex-lover's throat. The path I took through the rain-soaked streets to this tower, this palace, this golden cage I entered of my own free will. The clock on the nightstand read 9:47. I had slept for almost an hour, a deep, dreamless sleep born of sheer exhaustion. My body ached, my feet still hurt from those ridiculous high heels, my back was stiff from months of standing behind the bar, but the fatigue that had seeped into my bones had eased a little. I sat up slowly and surveyed the room in the daylight. It was even more beautiful than I had noticed last night. Minimalist but warm, with unfamiliar artworks on the walls and a thick, cream-colored rug that my toes sank into when I dangled my legs off the bed. The closet Dante mentioned was actually a dressing room the size of my bedroom. Inside hung clothes from designer brands I'd only seen in magazine ads: Valentino, Gucci, Tom Ford. Women's clothes that seemed to fit my size sat there with price tags that made my stomach churn. Clothes worth thousands of dollars were just waiting for me. As if they knew I would say yes. As if my acceptance was inevitable. I chose the simplest thing I could find, black leggings and a soft gray oversized cashmere sweater that was probably more expensive than my monthly rent. Of course, it fit me perfectly. Dante seemed like a man who paid attention to detail. The bathroom was even more impressive. I stood under the rain shower for 20 minutes, waiting for the hot water to wash away the fear, the rain, and the lingering scent of Marcus cologne that seemed stuck in my memory. The bathroom products were luxury brands, La Mer moisturizer, Oribe shampoo, products I'd seen in stores but never imagined using. When I emerged, wrapped in a towel that was somehow both incredibly soft and incredibly thick, I smelled like expensive flowers and almost felt human again. The bruise on my cheek looked even worse in the harsh bathroom light. The yellow-green color had darkened overnight, and the swelling was more pronounced. I touched it gently and grimaced at its sensitivity. No designer outfit could hide what I was. What I was. A victim. A charity case. A woman so desperate for safety that she had sold herself to a man notorious for violence. Lauren? Dante's voice came from the door, cultured and controlled even at this hour. Are you awake? My heart raced. I grabbed my sweater and leggings and quickly dressed, calling out, yes. 1 minute. When I opened the door, he stood in the hallway wearing dark pants and a white shirt, his sleeves rolled up to his elbows. His hair was damp from the shower and curled slightly at the nape of his neck. He looked incredibly handsome and extremely attractive, and I hated that my body reacted to his presence with an excitement I couldn't control. His eyes slowly scanned me, examining the borrowed clothes, my wet hair, the bruise I hadn't bothered to cover up. How did you sleep? He asked, his voice gentle. Better than I have in months, I admitted. The bed. Too much? He smiled slightly. They say I have expensive tastes. I meant comfortable. I suddenly felt shy and wrapped my arms around myself. Thank you. For everything. For last night, for this. I gestured vaguely at the room, the clothes, everything. I don't know how to thank you. I don't want you to thank me. Dante moved closer, and I caught the scent of his cologne, cedar and something darker, more complex. I want you to have breakfast. Then we need to talk. My stomach growled then, reminding me I hadn't eaten since my shift started yesterday. Dante's smile widened slightly. Come, he said, extending his hand. I told Antonio to get cake from the bakery on Newberry Street. The kitchen was as impressive as the rest of the penthouse, all white marble and stainless steel, equipped with top-of-the-line appliances that looked unused. Breakfast was laid out on the marble island, fresh croissants, fruit, cheese, coffee from a French press that smelled like heaven. You didn't have to do this, I said, my mouth watering despite myself. Sit down, Dante said gently, pulling out a bar stool. Eat. We'll talk later. I sat down. I ate. And God, after months of rationing food, of choosing between eating and paying bills, savoring fresh pastries and real coffee felt like an immeasurable luxury. Dante watched me eat with an expression I couldn't quite understand. He wasn't hungry, he had obviously already eaten. He just seemed pleased. As if feeding me gave him pleasure. Are you feeling better? He asked when I finished my second croissant. Much better. Sipping my coffee, I gathered my courage for the conversation ahead. You said we needed to talk. Yes. Dante refilled my coffee cup, then his own, and leaned against the counter across from me. About Marcus. About what's going to happen next. Despite the warm kitchen, a shiver ran down my spine. What did you do to him? Nothing permanent. His voice was completely neutral. My men spoke with him last night. They explained, in terms he could understand, that you are now under my protection, and that any attempt to reach you, approach you, or even think about you too much would have consequences he wouldn't survive. You threatened him. I made him a promise. Dante's eyes met mine, dark and certain. There's a difference. Threats are conditional. Promises are guarantees. I should have been horrified. I should have backed away from this ordinary argument about violence, from the certainty in his voice that he would kill Marcus without hesitation or regret. Instead, I felt something relax in my chest. It had been clenched so tightly for so long that I had forgotten it was there. Relief. He'll go to the police, I said, trying to think practically. He'll say you threatened him. With what evidence? Dante's smile was cold. 3 guys in ski masks caught him at a bar at 3 a.m. It could have been anyone. A random robbery. That kind of thing happens in Boston. He took a sip of his coffee. And even if he reports it, which he won't, I have excellent lawyers. The kind who make problems disappear. So that's it? I asked quietly. He just left. He was encouraged to move. Strongly encouraged. Dante's expression softened slightly. You're safe now, Lauren. That's what matters. Safe. That word again. I wanted to believe it so badly it hurt. What about the restraining order? I asked. The legal side? My lawyers will file for a permanent order this afternoon. The documentation of your injuries, witness statements from last night, and Marcus's history of violence, yes, I looked into that too, should ensure it's granted without issue. He walked around the kitchen island and came to stand beside me. You won't have to testify. You won't have to see him. Everything will be taken care of. This was too much. Too easy. The problems that had been suffocating me for months were solved with a few phone calls and the weight of Dante Moretti's name. Why? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Why are you doing all this for me? Dante's hand rose to caress my face, his thumb gently stroking the bruise. Because I can. Because you deserve to be protected. Because. He paused, a fragile thing glinting in his eyes. Because the moment you walked into my club, something inside me recognized something inside you. What could you possibly recognize in me? I whispered. I'm nobody. I'm nothing. I'm a bartender who can't even protect herself. Stop. His voice was firm but not harsh. You're not nothing, Lauren. You survived. You kept going even when everything was against you. Instead of asking for help you thought you didn't deserve, you worked yourself to exhaustion to maintain your independence. His other hand joined the first and caressed my face and chest with a tenderness that hurt. This is nothing. This is strength. This is courage. This is everything. Tears streamed from my eyes. I don't feel strong. You don't have to. You don't need to anymore. He drew closer, his forehead touching mine, a movement that now felt familiar. I'll be strong for both of us. I'll protect you while you heal. What about after I heal? I asked, my voice breaking. What happens when I'm no longer broken? When I'm no longer a project to be fixed? Dante pulled back to look at me, and what I saw in his eyes took my breath away. Hunger. Possessiveness. Something darker and more complex I couldn't name. Then, he said quietly, we'll discover what we can be when you're healed. Not because you need to protect me, but because you choose me for what I can give you. What's that? His smile was slow, devastating. Everything, Lauren. I told you. I want to give you everything. The weight of those words hung between us, laden with meanings I wasn't yet ready to examine. This wasn't a temporary arrangement. It wasn't charity, kindness, or even simple protection. This was a possession as complete and absolute as anything Marcus had ever sought to own. The only difference was that Dante's cage was lined with silk and gold, furnished with security and luxury and a kind of safety I had never known. And God help me, I wanted it. I wanted him. I wanted to believe this beautiful, dangerous man could be my salvation, not my ruin. I need to know the rules, I said, stepping back slightly. To breathe, to find space to think. If I'm staying here, if I'm accepting your protection, I need to understand what you expect. Dante nodded, his eyes holding me captive, stepping back to give me physical space. Fair enough. Ask me anything you want. Will I still work at the Onyx? If you want to. You don't have to anymore, though. He read the protest forming on my face and raised his hand. But I understand you need independence. Yes, you can continue working. With security. Security? A driver to take you to and from work. Someone to watch the bar to make sure no one bothers you. His voice was firm. This is not up for debate, Lauren. It's my job to protect you now. That word again. Mine. As if I were a possession, a treasure, something to be guarded and kept safe. What else? I asked, trying to focus on practical matters. Will I pay rent? Will I contribute to the grocery shopping? How will this work? Dante smiled amusedly. You can contribute if it makes you feel better. But Lauren, I have more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. Your bartending salary makes about as much difference to my monthly expenses as a rounding error. He got up to refill his coffee. If you want to contribute, do it by staying here. By keeping you safe and fed, you stop me from constantly looking over my shoulder in fear. That's not a fair trade. Why not? He turned to me, genuine curiosity in his eyes. You give me peace. I give you security. It seems perfectly fair to me. I give you peace, I repeated, confused. How? Dante carefully placed his cup on the table. His voice was quieter, more vulnerable when he spoke. I've been surrounded by violence my whole life, Lauren. People who wanted to use me, who feared me, who saw me as a tool for their purposes. His eyes met mine. But that first night you served me, you looked at me like I was just a man. Not a name, not a reputation, not a weapon to be used. Just a man who wanted a drink. I didn't know who you were, I confessed. Exactly. His smile was soft, almost sad. You saw me, Lauren. The real me beyond everything. And I can't stop thinking about it. You. What it would be like to come home to someone who sees me as a human, not a monster. The confession hung between us, raw and honest. This wasn't just about protection, ownership, or power dynamics. It was about loneliness, about 2 broken people finding unexpected solace in each other. I'm scared, I whispered. Of this. Of you. Of wanting to believe you. Good. Dante moved closer, his hands resting on either side of me on the counter, caging me without touching. Fear means you're smart. It means you understand what's happening here. What we're building. So what are we building? His eyes met mine, dark, infinite, and filled with promises I didn't dare trust. Something that belongs to us, he said. Something that is only ours. Other people's ideas don't matter. Other people's rules don't apply. Just you and me, discovering what we can be together. His phone vibrated in his pocket, breaking the moment. Dante pulled it out, looked at the screen, and his expression hardened. I need to take this, he said, his voice switching to work mode. It's about Marcus. My stomach clenched. What about him? I confirmed he's leaving Boston. Dante found my hand and squeezed it gently. Nothing to worry about. Stay here, finish your coffee. I'll be back in a few minutes. He disappeared down the hallway with the phone pressed to his ear, leaving me alone in the spacious kitchen with my thoughts, my fears, and the slow realization that my life had changed irrevocably in the space of 12 hours. I lived in a penthouse. I wore designer clothes. I was under the protection of one of Boston's most powerful men. And I didn't know if I had been rescued or if I had just been moved from one cage to another. 3 days passed in a blur of luxury that I couldn't quite comprehend. Dante was right about one thing, my apartment was no longer safe. When his men came to collect my belongings, they found the door kicked in, my few possessions scattered on the floor, the result of an angry outburst. Marcus's final message before he disappeared. The police filed a report. Dante's lawyers added it to their files. I tried not to think about what would have happened if I'd been home when Marcus decided to break down my door. Now my entire life fit into 3 neatly stacked boxes in Dante's guest room. 27 years of my life didn't amount to much, but at least it was mine. Well, I was living in an attic that belonged to me and now to a man I barely knew. I had fallen into a kind of routine. Waking up at 9, showering in that absurd bathroom, wearing clothes more expensive than what I earned in a month. Dante was usually gone by the time I got up, for work, he said, but he never specified what kind of work. I didn't think I wanted to know. Antonio, the injured man who had spent the first night with Dante, had unexpectedly become my shadow. He would take me to the Onyx for my evening shift, wait in the parking lot during my working hours, and take me back to the penthouse when I was done. He never spoke unless spoken to, but his presence was strangely comforting. At least someone was getting paid to care whether I lived or died. The Onyx staff now treated me differently. They were more careful, as if I were made of glass that could shatter if they spoke too loudly. Marco promoted me to head bartender without explanation and nearly doubled my salary. I acted as if I didn't know why. On the third night, Dante finally came home while I was still awake. I had grown accustomed to this routine. He would leave notes telling me to eat the meal his chef had prepared, to use whatever I needed, to make myself comfortable. But he was never there. He never breathed the same air in the same place. Until tonight. Curled up in his overly comfortable chair, I was wearing one of the shirts I'd borrowed from his laundry, because it carried his scent and made me feel less alone. I was reading a book from his extensive library. At night, the view of the harbor had become my favorite part of the penthouse, the lights reflecting on the dark water, everything above, feeling unreachable. The sound of the elevator startled me. Dante entered the penthouse at midnight, loosening his tie with one hand while carrying a leather briefcase in the other, probably more expensive than my old car. He looked tired, I noticed. A weariness that came from carrying a burden no one else could see, one that went deep into his bones. He stopped when he saw me, a momentary look of surprise on his face, then a warmer expression. "You're still awake," he said, his voice rougher than usual. I couldn't sleep. I put the book aside, suddenly feeling embarrassed that I was wearing his shirt. "I hope that's okay." "It's not a problem, it's more than that." His eyes wandered over me, lingering on his shirt reaching to the middle of my thighs, his sleeves curling above my elbows. "You should wear my clothes more often." A warmth spread up from my neck. "I'll wash it and wash them." He set his bag down and approached me with that fluid grace that made my pulse race. "Save them. Save them to wear. Wear whatever you want of mine." With a slow, possessive smile. "I like seeing you in my clothes." The sincerity of those words took my breath away. We had been living in the same place for 3 days, but for the first time, it felt real. For the first time, the walls between us had thinned enough to let something dangerous pass through. "Was it a long day?" I asked, desperately trying to steer the conversation into safer territory. Dante sat down on the couch next to me, his leg close enough to touch mine. "You could say that." He rested his head on the pillows and closed his eyes for a moment. "Issues that require my personal attention. The kind you can't talk about? The kind it's better you don't know about." He opened his eyes, turned his head, and looked at me. "How was your shift?" "Quiet. Marco put me on the VIP section." I tucked my legs under me, careful not to let his shirt ride up. "Your cabin was empty." Something flashed across his face. "I wanted you to be comfortable working in that section. You'll be working there permanently now. Because of you. Because you're good at your job." He reached out, playing with a strand of my hair with his fingers. "And yes, because of me. I protect what's mine, Lauren, that includes your professional reputation." "I'm not yours," I said automatically, but my protest grew weaker each time. "We both know that's a lie." His hand slid from my hair to my face, his thumb caressing my cheekbone. The bruise had faded considerably, now just a yellow shadow that could be largely concealed with makeup. "How does it feel?" "Better. It doesn't hurt anymore as long as I don't press on it." "Good." His thumb caressed the spot with devastating gentleness. "I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me." My stomach tightened. "Okay. Are you happy here?" The question caught me off guard. "What? Are you happy?" He repeated, his eyes searching mine. "I know this arrangement isn't traditional. I know you came here out of necessity rather than choice. But you've been here a few days now, the immediate danger has passed, and I need to know if you want to stay." I should have said no. I should have thanked him for his hospitality, for saving me from Marcus, for the clothes, the safety, and the absurd luxury of his world. But God help me, I didn't want to leave. "I'm scared," I admitted quietly. "This is too much, too fast." "You're too much. I don't know the rules, I don't know what you expect, I don't know if I'm a guest, a prisoner, or something in between. Yet you are still here. Because I'm more afraid of going back there. Of being alone again. Waiting for Marcus to find me or for the next Marcus to come." My eyes filled with tears. "Is this pathetic? Is it pathetic that I chose this because I'm scared?" "No." Dante's other hand joined the first and cupped my face with a tenderness that broke me. "Fear is honest. Fear is real. Choosing safety over pride isn't pathetic, Lauren. It's survival. But how long will it last?" I whispered. How long before you get bored of your charity project? How long before I'm no longer fragile enough to be interesting? His jaw tightened. You're not a charity project. You're not fragile. And I don't get bored with the things that matter to me. How could I matter to you? You barely know me. I know you well enough. With his thumb, he wiped away tears I hadn't noticed. I know you drink your coffee with cream and 2 sugars. I know you read before bed because it helps calm your mind. You're left-handed but filled drinks with your right hand because a bartending guide said it looked more professional. His eyes met mine, dark and infinite. I know you deserve better than what life has given you. And I know I want to be the one to give it to you. Why? The question was cut off by a sob. Why me? Dante leaned forward until his forehead touched mine, his breath warm against my lips. Because you see me, Lauren. Not my reputation, my power, my money. Just me. His voice became a whisper. And I haven't been myself for so long that I've forgotten what that feels like. This confession shattered something inside me. This man, this powerful, dangerous, untouchable man, was as lonely as I was. He needed someone to connect with, someone who could see the person beyond his armor, just as much as I did. I don't know how to do that, I whispered. I don't know how to be the person you need. Then we'll find out together. His lips brushed my forehead, gently, like a word. No pressure. No expectations. Just time and space to see what we could be. What if it doesn't work? What if I can't be the person you want? His smile was sad. Then I'll help you start over in a safe place. I'll give you enough money so you never have to worry again. I'll make sure Marcus never finds you. His hand squeezed my face gently. But I'll regret it for the rest of my life. The honesty in his voice broke the last remnants of my resistance. I lunged forward, closing the distance between us, pressing my lips to his in a helpless, messy kiss that tasted like the salt of my tears. Dante responded immediately, one hand sliding through my hair, the other wrapping around my waist and pulling me into his embrace. The kiss deepened, his tongue tracing the edge of my lips until they parted and took him in. God, it tasted like whiskey, sin, and the promises I wanted to believe in. His hands were everywhere, stroking my hair, tracing my spine, squeezing my hips as if afraid I would disappear if he let go. And maybe I would have. Maybe it was all a fever dream, a desperate fantasy conjured by a woman who had forgotten what safety felt like. But if it was a dream, I didn't want to wake up. Dante pulled back, breathless, his eyes dark with desire. Lauren. Don't, I whispered, clutching her shirt tightly with my hands. Don't talk. Don't think. Just. I kissed him again, pouring 3 days of tension, fear, and desperate longing into that touch. He moaned against my mouth, his hand sliding under the shirt I wore, his shirt, finding my bare skin. His palms were warm, slightly rough, creating waves of tremors through my body as they explored my waist, my ribs, the curves of my spine. Are you sure? He asked, pulling back to look at me. Because once we cross this line, there's no turning back. You'll be mine in every way. I already am, I confessed, a stone settling in my chest. I have been since the first night. Since you asked what happened to my face. Ever since you looked at me like I was worth protecting. Something raw and possessive flashed in his eyes. Mine, he growled, the word vibrating from his chest to mine. I'm yours, I conceded, surrendering to the inevitable end. He rose in one fluid motion, taking me with him, my legs wrapped around his waist. The book I was reading fell to the floor, forgotten. He carried me through the hallway to the bedroom, not the guest room, but his own, kissing me along the way, as if unable to bear breaking contact. The bedroom was as magnificent as the rest of the penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor, a bed large enough for 4 people, everything in shades of charcoal and midnight blue. But I barely noticed the details because Dante laid me down on the sheets carrying his scent and stood over me with eyes promising things I'd only seen in my dreams. This is your last chance, he said, his voice hardened by restraint. Tell me to stop, and I will. No consequences, no judgment. But if you say yes. Yes, I cut him off, pulling him toward me. Yes, Dante. I want this. I want you. The restraint in his eyes shattered. He kissed me madly, his hands undoing the buttons of my shirt, his lips tracing the outline of my newly exposed skin. Every touch was respectful, reverent, as if I were something precious he had sought his entire life. And perhaps I was. Maybe we were both searching, two broken people circling each other in the dark, until the collision became inevitable. The shirt fell to the floor, folded over mine. Then the pants. Then the last barriers between us, until only the touch of our skin remained. His weight pinned me to the bed as his hands explored every curve and hollow of my body. "Beautiful," he murmured into my throat, his lips tracing where my pulse beat. "So beautiful, Lauren." No one had ever called me beautiful and meant it like a prayer. When he finally entered me, the feeling took my breath away, fullness, connection, the most primal sense of being claimed. His eyes held mine, dark and intense, watching every expression cross my face. "Mine," he growled, beginning to move. "Say it." "Yours," I breathed, my nails digging into his shoulders. "I'm yours, Dante." Those words seemed to release something in him. He moved faster, deeper, entering me with a possessiveness that should have frightened me, but instead felt like coming home. Like finding a missing piece I never knew I'd lost. I shattered around him, waves of pleasure washing over my body, and I gasped for breath, screaming his name. A few seconds later, he followed me, burying his face in my neck as he found his own release. For a long time, we held each other, our hearts racing, our skin slippery with sweat, the rain outside creating a cocoon of sound that separated us from the rest of the world. "Stay," Dante whispered into my hair. "Not just tonight. Not just until you feel safe. Stay because you want to stay. Because this is." His arms tightened around me, "where you belong." I should have protested. I should have reminded him that I didn't know him very well, that everything was happening too fast, that wanting someone and belonging to them weren't the same thing. But leaning against his chest, listening to his heart beating steadily and confidently beneath my ear, I couldn't find the words. Because maybe he was right. Maybe I did belong here. In his arms. In his bed. In this strange new life that both frightened and excited me. "Okay," I whispered into the darkness. "I'll stay." His lips touched my temples, softly and respectfully. "Thank you," he murmured. "For trusting me. For choosing me. For being brave enough to let me keep you safe." Outside, the rain continued to fall, cleansing the city. And inside, in the arms of a man who was both salvation and danger, I finally convinced myself. Safe. Protected. Maybe, just maybe, I could believe I'd found a home in the last place I'd expect. In the arms of a man who looked at my broken pieces and found me worth protecting. The city had transformed from winter's harsh grip to spring's gentle promise. Cherry blossoms lined the streets outside Onyx, their petals drifting like pink snow across the windows. Watching them fall, my hands steady and confident, no longer trembling with fear or exhaustion, I prepared the perfect martini. So much had changed. Everything had changed. I was still working at the Onyx, but now as head bartender with a salary that had seemed impossible a year ago. I enrolled in business management classes at Boston University and began using the mind I had wasted just to survive to build something lasting. The apartment I had once feared leaving behind had been donated to a women's shelter, along with most of my old life. I no longer needed it. "Lauren." Marco's voice interrupted my thoughts. "Mr. Moretti is here." Those words made my heart race again. Even though 6 months had passed and I had spent countless nights in his arms, Dante Moretti's entrance into the club still made my heart pound. He walked through the crowd like a king surveying his kingdom, men instinctively stepping aside, women watching him with unabashed, hungry eyes. But his eyes were only for me, dark, warm, and filled with the promises he had kept every day since that rainy night. Tonight he was dressed in coal gray, his tie loose, the top button of his shirt undone. He looked tired. There were problems with a business deal, something he'd been trying to resolve for weeks, but when his eyes met mine, the weariness softened into something else. Love. God, when had I started noticing that look? When had I stopped fighting him? "Lagavulin 16, I said as he approached the bar, reaching for his preferred whiskey. 2 fingers, neat. His smile was slow, devastating. "You know me well." "I should." You've been ordering the same drink for months. Maybe I like consistency. He leaned against the bar, close enough for me to smell the cedar and smoke. Or maybe I like watching you work. A warmth spread up my neck. Even after everything we'd shared, he could still embarrass me with a single look. I filled his drink with the care he had first praised and slid it across the polished mahogany table to him. Our fingers touched, and an electric current shot through my arm. 6 months had passed, but his touch still affected me like the first time. "How was class?" he asked, sipping his whiskey. "It was good. Professor Chen said my marketing proposal was the best in the class." There was pride in his voice. "He wants to recommend me for an internship with one of his corporate clients." A fierce, possessive look flashed in Dante's eyes. "Of course he does. You're smart." "I'm learning," I corrected. "There's a difference." "Then keep learning. Keep growing. Keep becoming everything you're meant to be." His hand found mine on the bar, our fingers intertwining. "I'm proud of you, Lauren." Those words still affected me. For so long, I had been invisible, worthless, disposable. Dante's pride in my accomplishments was like sunlight after years of darkness. The phone rang. He glanced at it, his jaw tightening. "I have to take this. Work. Go." I squeezed his hand. "I'll be here when you're done." He kissed my knuckles, an old gesture that always made my chest ache, then disappeared into his private booth, phone pressed to his ear. I returned to my work, mixing drinks and managing my staff with the confidence I'd earned through months of effort. The other bartenders respected me now, not because of Dante, but because I'd earned it through my skill and dedication. Well, mostly not because of Dante. Time passed quickly. As I restocked the top shelf, I felt it, that familiar tingling sensation that Dante was watching me. When I turned, I saw him standing at the end of the bar, his eyes intense, his expression unreadable. "Everything okay?" I asked, wiping my hands on a towel. "Come with me." It wasn't a request. It was an order, given in that voice that made my knees tremble. I looked at Marco, and he nodded in agreement. These days, when Dante Moretti wanted something, everyone did as he asked. I untied my apron, my heart racing for reasons unknown. Dante took my hand and led me not to his usual table, but toward the back exit. Antonio was waiting there, holding the door open, his face expressionless as always. "Where are we going?" I asked as Dante directed me toward the waiting Mercedes. "You'll see." His smile was mysterious, almost childlike. "Do you trust me?" That question was still important, even now. In our world, trust was not something to be taken lightly. It was earned through consistency, keeping promises, and choosing to be vulnerable every day. "Yes," I said simply. "I trust you." The car ride was silent, Dante's hand in mine, his thumb tracing patterns in my palm. We passed familiar streets, which slowly became unfamiliar as we left the city center and entered unfamiliar neighborhoods. Finally, the car stopped in front of a beautiful brownstone building in Back Bay, a building with vines climbing its facade and window boxes just beginning to bloom with flowers. "What is this?" I asked as Dante helped me out of the car. "Our future." He pulled a key from his pocket, reflecting the light of the metal street lamp. "If you want." My heart was pounding. "Dante, I know the penthouse is beautiful. I know it's comfortable, safe, and has everything we need." He led me up the stairs, his hand firmly on my waist. "But this is mine, Lauren. My space, my rules, my life that I invited you into." He opened the door and motioned for me to enter first. The interior took my breath away. Hardwood floors gleamed in soft light. An elegant staircase with a banister wound its way upward. Through an arched doorway, I saw a modern kitchen that blended seamlessly with the original crown moldings and period details. "I want us to have something that's ours," Dante continued, his voice soft behind me. "A space we choose together. One we design together. A place where we build our life together." Dazed, I wandered around the room, touching walls that could be ours, imagining furniture we could choose, picturing mornings spent in the sun-filled kitchen. "The master bedroom overlooks the park," Dante said, following me up the stairs. "There's a home office for your work. There's a library because I know how much you love to read. And He stopped in front of a closed door, a nursery. Eventually. If you want. My breath caught. A nursery? He opened the door, revealing a bright, empty room with windows overlooking a small garden. I know it's early. I know we haven't discussed this. He turned to me, a clear fragility in his eyes. But I want this with you, Lauren. Not now, but someday. Children. Marriage. A completely normal life, but one that's extraordinary because it's ours. My eyes filled with tears. 6 months ago, I was alone, scared, barely surviving. Now I was standing in a beautiful house with a man who wanted to be with me forever, who saw me as someone worth building a future with. Say something, Dante whispered, cupping my face in his hands. Tell me I didn't scare you away too quickly, too much. You didn't scare me. I covered his hands with mine, leaning into his touch. I love this. I love the house. I love the idea of making it ours. I love. The words caught in my throat, too big and too real to say easily. Say it, he insisted, his eyes searching mine. Please, Lauren. I need to hear it. I love you. My confession was almost a whisper, but it was enough. Dante's smile was bright, transforming his face from merely handsome to utterly captivating. Say it again. I love you. This time louder, stronger. I love you, Dante Moretti. I love your protectiveness and your kindness. I love the way you look at me like I matter. I love how you make me feel safe but also push me to grow. I love. My voice trailed off. I love that you see me when I'm invisible. Then he kissed me, a deep, possessive kiss, pouring the emotions he'd suppressed for 6 months into that touch. When we finally parted, both of us breathless, he pressed his forehead against mine. I love you too, he murmured. I've loved you since that first night you served me whiskey like I was just another customer. Since you saw a man, not a monster, when you looked at me. His hands gripped my face tightly. You saved me, Lauren. You don't even realize it, but you saved me. I think we saved each other. Yes. He pulled back and reached into his pocket. That's why I want to make this official. The ring box was small, black velvet, clearly expensive and carefully chosen. When he opened it, my heart stopped. A diamond appeared, catching the fading sunlight and turning it into a rainbow fire. Marry me, Dante said, his voice steady despite the fragility in his eyes. Not because you need me. Not because I protect you. Because you love me. Because you want to build this life with me. Because every day you choose me, just as I choose you. I should have hesitated. I should have thought about how fast, how unusual this was, how our beginning stemmed more from desperation than romance. But looking at this man who gave me everything, security, love, a future I had given up on believing in, I couldn't find a single reason to say no. Yes, I whispered, extending my trembling hand. Yes, I will marry you. The ring, of course, fit perfectly. Dante probably knew my ring size even better than I did. He'd been planning this for weeks without me realizing it. When? I asked, watching in awe as the diamond caught the light. Whenever you want. Tomorrow. Next year. As long as you're mine, it doesn't matter. I already am. His smile was possessive and satisfied. Yes. But now everyone will know. We stood in the empty nursery, embracing as the sun set over Boston, the sky painted in shades of pink and gold. Outside, the city kept its endless rhythm. Inside, we created our own world, our own rules, our own definition of what love could be. This was no fairy tale. Our beginning was too dark, too hopeless, too saturated with violence and fear for that. But it was real. It was ours. And it was built on something stronger than romance, survival, trust earned not given, choosing each other even when easier options existed. I need to ask you something, I said quietly, stroking the lapel of his suit with my fingers, and I want you to be honest. Always. Marcus. Even 6 months later, that name still made me tense. What really happened to him? Dante's expression didn't change, but there was a shift in his eyes. Do you really want to know? I considered the question. Did I? Did I want to confirm what I suspected, how far Dante had gone to protect me? No, I said finally. I just wanted to know if you'd tell me the truth if I asked. He's alive, Dante said, his voice carefully neutral. He's living in California under a different name, with enough money to start over and enough fear to never look back. My men check on him every month, to make sure he stays there. His hand gripped my face. He'll never hurt you again, Lauren. Don't even think his name without remembering what happens to men who touch what's mine. Relief and guilt fought in my chest. I was relieved that Marcus was gone, truly gone, that I would never wake up to his fists or his rage again. I felt guilty that part of me was happy Dante could provide such ruthless protection. Thank you, I whispered. Don't thank me for keeping you safe. His thumb stroked my lower lip. This isn't a favor, Lauren. It's a promise I made the moment you entered my life. We made love in that empty house, blessing our future home with desperate kisses and whispered words. The floor was hard, the house was unfurnished, but none of that mattered because we had each other. Then, as the last trays of sunset painted patterns on the walls while I lay in his arms, I felt something settle in my chest. Something that had been restless and afraid for so long that I'd forgotten what peace felt like. I want to keep working, I said quietly. At the Onyx. At least until I get my diploma. Okay. There was no argument. No possessive demand that I quit. Just acceptance. And I want to pay for half of this house. He laughed, his voice echoing from his chest to mine. Lauren, you can afford half of this house. Then I'll pay what I can. Even if it's 5% I need to contribute. This needs to be ours, not just something else you gave me. Dante was silent for a moment, then kissed my forehead. 5% it is. But you're underestimating yourself. And one day. I took a breath, gathered my courage. One day I want to know everything. Your work, your family, everything. Not now. But eventually, if we are really going to build a life together, I need to fully understand who you are. He wrapped his arms tighter around me. I can do that. When you're ready. When you're strong enough to bear the weight of the burden I carry. I'm already strong enough, I replied. You helped me remember that. Yes, you are. His lips met mine, not passionately, but with a tender kiss. You're the strongest person I know, Lauren Mason. And soon, you'll be Lauren Moretti. That name thrilled me. A new identity, a new life, a fresh start built from the ashes of my old self. We finally left home and returned to the penthouse that would be our home for a few more months while our brownstone was being prepared. I wore his ring on my finger, a visible proof of promises made and a future planned. The next night at the Onyx, Dante didn't sit at his usual table. Instead, he stood at the bar where all the customers and staff could see him, kissing me and making it clear how valuable I was to him. She said yes, he announced to the entire room, his voice rising above the music. Lauren Mason has agreed to be my wife. The club erupted in applause. Marco smiled. Even stoic Antonio had a small smile on his wounded face. And I stood there, wearing a ring more expensive than most people earn in a year, in the arms of a man with a reputation that would intimidate grown men, feeling more like myself than I ever had. This wasn't the life I had imagined. It was better. Because it was real. Because I deserved it. Because every day I chose him, and he chose me, and together we were building something that was ours alone. The broken, helpless, lonely girl who had walked into the Onyx 6 months ago was gone. In her place was a woman who knew her worth, demanded respect, and had learned that being protected was not the same as being owned. And the man who saved her? He had learned that strength didn't always mean being alone. That fragility and strength could coexist. That sometimes the best protection you could offer someone was the freedom to be who they needed to be. I love you, I whispered to her lips, not caring who heard. I'll love you more, she replied, cupping my face with her hands as if I were something precious. My Lauren. My future. My everything. The music swelled. Beyond the windows, the city sparkled. And in the heart of Boston's most dangerous nightclub, in the arms of the most dangerous man, I had finally found what I was looking for. Not security. Not protection. Not even love, though that was part of it. I had found a home. And I would never let it go. Epilogue. 2 years later, the nursery Dante showed me on the first day was no longer empty. Soft afternoon light filtered through the cloud and star-patterned curtains, illuminating the crib where our daughter slept. We named her Sophia Rose Moretti, in memory of Dante's lost sister and the new beginning we had created together. Standing in the doorway, I watched her tiny chest rise and fall, still amazed that something so perfect could exist. That I could be her mother. That my life had changed completely since that rainy night when a strong man asked me a simple question. Who did this to you? With those words, everything changed. Everything. Dante wrapped his arms around me from behind, rested his chin on my shoulder, and gazed at our daughter with unwavering admiration. She's perfect, he murmured. She is. Just like her mother. I turned in his arms and looked at the man who was now my husband, my partner, my home. His temples had turned gray, and there were smile lines at the corners of his eyes. 2 years of peace, love, and building something beautiful together had softened his hard edges a little. But he was still dangerous. He was still powerful. He was still the man whose name made others uneasy. But not me. Never me. Are you happy? He asked, the question he still asked regularly, to make sure I'd made the right choice. Absolutely. I rose on my tiptoes and kissed him. And you? More than I thought I would be. He wrapped his arms tighter around me. Thank you, Lauren. For saying yes. For staying. For giving me this. Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible. For protecting me when I was broken. For loving me enough to make me strong enough to stand beside you. As our daughter slept and the city hummed beyond our windows, we stood there, wrapped in each other's arms. The brownstone house had become everything we'd imagined, a home filled with love and laughter, morning coffee and late-night conversations, all the ordinary magic of a life well lived. Sometimes I still thought about that night. The rain. The fear. The desperate choice that brought me here. And I thanked God for every moment. For every terrifying, beautiful, impossible moment that led me to this man, this life, this love that saved us both. Because in the end, we were both right. I was his. Completely, utterly, irrevocably his. But he was mine too, and that changed everything.